Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Elixir Mix podcast. This is our first episode, and this week we have with us Justin Bean.
Hey there.
Mark Erikson.
Hey.
Josh Adams.
Hello.
I'm Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv. And since this is our first episode, I thought we'd just talk a little bit about the show, kind of what we want to see happen with it, and give everybody a chance to get to know all of you folks. We also have two other people who have agreed to be on the panel. Eric Berry is taking care of some personal stuff and just couldn't make it today. And Cody Pohl is also on the list, and I didn't get him on the calendar invite, so you can all blame me, and we'll say nice things about him next week. So, yeah, let's go ahead and just start with introductions. Josh, since I called on you first, why don't you go first?
Yep. So I'm Josh. I run DailyDrip and started Elixir Sips. I've been doing Elixir for 5 years now, I think. Maybe, I don't know, since 0.10, I know. And it's still the thing that I choose to start backends in. Anyway, so glad to be here.
Awesome. Justin, how about you?
I'm Justin Bean. I'm the lead Elixir engineer over at codefund.io with Eric Berry. I've been doing Elixir for going on 2 years now. I'm a longtime Rubyist before this, but I fell in love with Elixir, and it's all I've been doing since. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Nice. And what about you, Mark?
Yeah, my name's Mark Erikson. I've come from Ruby most recently. I've been in Elixir now for about 2 years. I don't remember exactly. I really love Elixir. I got super excited about pattern matching, OTP, everything like that. I participate with Cody. We manage a meetup locally, and I have another meetup that I run. And I'm a software architect for a back end, and it's all Elixir. And I do all the building of it too. So I'm excited to be here.
Very cool. So when you say you run a meetup locally, is that something that's within striking distance of me?
So we run one that's hosted where Cody works. That's the Elixir lunch. And then I host a Utah Elixir. That's an evening one. And so they're both in Utah Valley.
All right. Well, that's within striking distance. That's cool. All right. Yeah, I know Mark from the local community, and Josh and I have interacted a bunch over the last several years related to Ruby. In fact, I think I know both of you through the Ruby community as well as Eric. So, yeah, kind of interesting. Everybody has that sort of Ruby to Elixir background. For me, I've just kind of played with Elixir a bit. As you can imagine, I'm trying to stay on top of a whole bunch of different technologies. And so I kind of pick one and play with it for a little while and then move on. So, yeah, I'm about halfway through Dave Thomas's Elixir course, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes, or I'll just call out if you go to devchat.tv/Elixir course, then that'll link you over to Dave's course. Part of the reason the show got started, and I'll kind of dive into that, and then I have a few other questions just to, get the conversation going about how you all got into Elixir and how other people can get started with it. So the show was something that I did a survey last year. I need to do that again this year and ask people questions about themselves and things like that, information that I could give to sponsors in general about the demographics of the shows. But then I also asked a bunch of questions about the website and the podcasts and stuff. And I asked what podcasts people wanted to see us start next. And overwhelmingly, there were two technologies. And I bet you can guess what they were, or at least one of them. One of them was Elixir, and the other one was React. So the largest show on devchat.tv is JavaScript Jabber. We got a lot of JavaScript people in, and they wanted a React show. So, yeah, we did that for you. And then you also have a bonus with Vue. So we started a Vue show as well. And I kind of pulled everything together for the React show and the Vue show because I had people who were helping me get a little momentum on that. And the Elixir show kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. And then Eric got excited about it. And so he found most of our panelists. And yeah, so we kind of pulled things together, and that's how the show kind of came about. And it's funny how many people I'm reaching out to that I know from Ruby Rogues. So yeah, we'll see who we can line up to get on this show. But yeah, ultimately, for me anyway, the show is something that I want to pull together mainly because it serves a community that I feel like I already know some. And also, I just want to provide content that makes a difference for people. And this is an easy area to expand into where I think we can make a difference. So for me, that's kind of the payoff. Hopefully, I'll see you all at some Elixir conferences and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm going. I'm curious what the rest of you are looking for as far as, what you'd like to see from the show and what you're hoping to get from the show.
I mean, so what I want to see is more people using Elixir, just because I tend to enjoy it quite a bit and want the community to grow. But also, I think that having discussions around some of the, I guess, more Erlang or OTP things that maybe don't get, like the first 4 months you play with Elixir, you might not get into them as deeply as I think you should. Like we're doing like clustering inside of like VPNs for a project I'm working on, and I don't even know how I would do that without Elixir. So the fact that it enables new stuff makes me want more people to use it.
Nice. I'm guessing everybody else is just kind of alongside those things one way or the other.
Yeah, for me, I just want to learn from other people who have been doing Elixir for longer than I have, and get my head around some new patterns. Like I'm interested in the clustering stuff. I'm interested in using macros and things to build frameworks. So I'm just looking to like share ideas and learn from others.
Nice.
Yeah, I love the idea and the opportunity to involve more people like from the community to help raise awareness of the projects that people are already working on. But I, like Josh, I just want Elixir to have a bigger audience, to have more people using it, because like when I came to Ruby, I came from C#. And when I came to Ruby, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what web development is supposed to be. This is so much fun. And I haven't had as much fun until I came to Elixir. When I came to Elixir and I started learning what I could do with the functional programming and all the different unique characteristics that the Beam provides, I was like, man, this is just so exciting. I just want to share this with people. So my excitement is really just to try and help other people have a good experience with Elixir and to help answer questions.
Yeah, I can echo that pretty heavily. Ruby was the first language that I like loved rather than like was using to get a job done. Ruby was the first thing where I was like, I'm going to play with stuff that I will never use. And Elixir is like really was the second one for me. And then Elm is the third one. So anyway, I want people to enjoy it the way I enjoy it.
Nice. I think I have somebody lined up that we're going to be talking to about Elixir and Elm. So that should be fun. I'm kind of curious too. You all mentioned that you came out of the Ruby community and into the Elixir community. Do you want to talk a little bit about that journey?
Yeah. So for me, I was a longtime Rubyist developer, and moving into something like Elixir made a lot of sense to me. Like the syntax was pretty similar to me at the time. And, I had for a long time, I guess, a bit of difficulty wrapping my head around some of the more object-oriented paradigms in Ruby. And with Elixir, for some reason, it just made a lot of sense to me.
So I'm curious how you found Elixir. Was it just people talking about it, or was it a particular conference talk or something else?
So I took a job as a senior engineer at a place here in Boulder, Colorado, and they were rewriting a Node API. It was like Node and MongoDB in the back end. They wanted to rewrite it in Elixir with Postgres, and there's a lot of like offline use case for this project, and we ended up building a pretty robust CQRS framework in Elixir. So that's how I came across it, and ended up kind of taking the lead on the project.
That makes sense. How about you, Josh? How did you get into Elixir?
I've discussed it a few times, but generally my arc went through Erlang to Elixir. So I was working on actually like this meta exchange for Bitcoin, so across multiple exchanges. And we built it using an actor model, but we did it in Ruby. And my plan was, I'll use Celluloid and I'll use JRuby, and stuff will be great. Because it really called for the actor model. We wanted like stateful WebSockets, and it made a lot of sense. And I don't blame Celluloid, but it turns out you probably shouldn't do actor model stuff. You expect a lot of traffic on in Ruby, or at least shouldn't have back then. So like I was enamored with the actor model, but it ultimately didn't cause any real problems on that project, though there were some growing pains. But eventually I was like, it's kind of ridiculous that I'm so interested in the actor model and I'm trying to shoehorn it in with Ruby. And so I started getting interested in Erlang, and there was the Nash FP. It's a functional programming meetup in Nashville. And Brian Hunter was running like a Erlang class every month, for like 4 months solid. So one of my best friends lived up in Nashville, and so we went there and sort of learned Erlang that way. And then during that period, somebody linked me to the Elixir talk from Ordev, I think is how it's pronounced, where Jose showed like moving a module across the cluster with just by moving the bytecode over. And that was literally one of like my little playground toys I was building in Celluloid at the time. Basically needed that and couldn't get it. And so I was like, okay, this is the thing I want to like invest time into because I have lots of use cases for that kind of thing. And it's hard to get it other places. So, and now I use that quite a bit.
Very cool. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I came mostly from, so Ruby was the most recent language I'd been using, and along with JavaScript. And it was really Dave Thomas. I really respected him as a Rubyist and his Ruby books and just as a speaker. And when I heard him start talking about Elixir and how he was getting excited about it, then that made me think, oh, there's something here. I should pay attention. And so I got his book when it came out. And that was when I first started into Elixirs, when his book was out. And I started playing with it. And, a lot of the concepts were very different, being functional instead of object-oriented, and using a lot of recursion and the message passing. It was all very different. So it took me a little while to get comfortable with it. So, but that's been something I've been excited about, is just, I usually look to leaders in the community that I respect, and I see kind of trends and I watch for those. And that's kind of what ended up bringing me to Elixir.
Nice. So what do you guys recommend then for somebody who's newer to Elixir, or, everybody has kind of a Ruby background, and I think I see a lot of movement from Ruby to Elixir. I see it from other communities, but not as strongly. So if somebody has some experience with Ruby or maybe JavaScript or something, and they're thinking, oh, this Elixir thing sounds good. Oh, I just found a podcast on it, and we're kind of talking about our experience with it. Yeah, how do people get started with it?
So for me, I think the biggest thing is like learning the data types and then getting your head around the recursion patterns more than anything. I didn't spend personally a ton of time looking into Phoenix or any frameworks, whereas like with Ruby, when I got started in that, I think I learned Rails pretty much immediately. And then that's like, I guess my biggest, first step, I think.
Yeah, I would echo that. What I always like is like I'd love for someone that's new to the language to try something way different than what they're doing right now, right? Because it gives you more like play space and lets you approach a problem that you're not. If you do a problem that you're very familiar with in like an object-oriented style, you probably will start off using the language wrong, or in a way that you're fighting against the grain. So if you do something like way different than what you normally do, and it'll let you just kind of explore the language rather than try to shoehorn like active record into Elixir or something.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think for getting started, I think there's a lot of resources that are available online. I know Josh is involved with creating some education resources. I'm working on creating a course to help people come who are new to Elixir, because, as part of doing meetups, a lot of the people who come and visit are people who are really just kind of trying to get their head into it. And so I think local community is a great place to get started if you can find any local meetups. Otherwise, a lot of resources online are available for free. There's some excellent books, and Pragmatic Studios does have that course, and I think that's what you were alluding to, Charles. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of great places to get started.
Yeah, and I'd love to piggyback on that and shill very briefly. We created DailyDrip.com 5 weeks or 25 screencasts. That's like just a free intro to Elixir and OTP and Ecto and Phoenix. And that's like, if you just kind of want to play with it, there's a progression that I think is useful, which gets you like doing message passing before you play with something like Ecto.
Very cool. Like I said, I mean, my only experience has really been through Dave's course and then just fiddling around in the, what is it, IEX or whatever, the interactive.
That's the thing.
Interactive Elixir. So cool. And as far as getting it installed on the machine, I guess most of these tutorials will walk you through that as well.
Yeah, like brew install Elixir.
Sure, just make it easy, why don't you? But yeah, I've found that most systems do have a package manager that'll just pull it in for you.
Yep, there's a package on Windows as well in Chocolatey Nugget, or however you pronounce that Honorio has maintained since way forever ago, and it's just trivial to get it running on Windows as well. And obviously on Linux, you do it however you do it in your system.
Yep. So are there particular resources you like? I mean, some of you mentioned Dave Thomas's course or book. Are there other like blogs that are kind of indispensable for staying up with Elixir? Or Reddit? I don't know.
I think the Slack channel or the Slack community is really good. And then there's our Elixir, which I visit. I don't know, maybe once or twice a month. I should visit it more, but I'm busy. Anyway, and I like the stuff that I have put together and made available for free, but there's lots of other really great stuff. And there's lots of links actually from the Elixir-Lang site. There's links to learning resources, and they all tend to be really good.
Yeah, there's the Elixir weekly email newsletter, and then there's Elixir Radar, which is actually by Platformatech, who's the company that's behind Elixir. And then there's a local Colorado person does a website called elixirschool.com as well, which has a lot of tutorials and things for people who are looking to get started with it.
And then also just the actual guide on Elixir-Lang is way better than most programming language guides on their website. They can walk you through really cool stuff. Also, howistart.org has a really good post. I think it was their first post is from Jose, and it's like now you're learning with portals or something. It's really covering the message passing stuff, and it's really cool. And hey, it's Jose talking about how he starts with Elixir, so it's worth a read.
Yeah, there's another website I follow. It's called elixirstatus.com, and it's really just a place where people have the ability to just say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I created. Here's a blog article, and just kind of sharing kind of news of the community. It's one of the I like to follow.
Oh yeah, also there is the My Elixir Status hashtag. So on Twitter, check out My Elixir Status as a hashtag. There's people posting awesome stuff all the time.
Yep, I agree.
Very cool. That's pretty much where I wanted to go with things and just kind of get an idea of, where everybody's at. What do you all use Elixir for at work? Are you all working in Phoenix, or are there other things you're doing with Elixir?
The project that I'm working on right now is all pretty standard Phoenix. In the past, I've built frameworks using umbrella applications. So I've had a couple of Phoenix servers running for like an API and then a web application, and then sort of decouple the rest of the application into smaller Elixir applications that a cluster or an application running the database, or like a command service running mutations and things in the database. So, but then I've also built other frameworks and things. You're mostly using either like Plug as the web server or Phoenix as the web server. If there's something that I need, like the things that Phoenix provides, like I really like the route helpers and things that Phoenix gives you, and then it makes it easy for me to spin up a web application pretty quick. But
in service of doing things that aren't webby, I like to I've still run a few services just on my machine that are just Elixir apps. They have no web anything. They have a database, and they'll do things like watch IRC channels or Slack channels and slurp in interesting links for me to review later, because I can't watch all the time. And then separately from that, like there's on a project I'm working on, we need a relatively frequently updated exchange rate so that other things can get it quickly. And we actually, normally I would just maybe store this in memory, but in this case, we need to store it in the database for reporting purposes later. And so we have like one app in our umbrella app that literally its sole purpose is on a cron job every 10 minutes, go get an exchange rate, put it in the database. And then other things that need it can pull it from that table. And then do a lot of Phoenix. Typically, I just use Absinthe these days. So Phoenix and Absinthe make a GraphQL thing and then put a front end on top of it. I am presently on a super secret project that I'll launch in a few weeks. We're going to be using to start, like Phoenix Absinthe has a way to annotate a view function with GraphQL as a module attribute to like do GraphQL queries to get them into the views. And I think that's really neat. I'm just not playing with it, but yeah, generally, I don't do much Vue stuff in Phoenix these days. I just generate GraphQL APIs and other interesting things that aren't web related at all, like RPC to machines running a custom OS.
Cool.
Yeah, at work, we have a Phoenix backend. It's an umbrella app. So it's actually two Phoenix web servers that have a series of different apps for business logic. I also have a personal project that I was working on. It was a Phoenix app that also an umbrella that hooks up to a CouchDB, which is also an Erlang document database I was playing with. But I also agree with Josh. I love GraphQL. We use Absinthe for the API on that, and then have like React-based web and mobile front ends.
Yeah, so my GraphQL experience, so I was like very fast with Rails and Ruby. In my experience these days, there's a little learning curve, but I'm way past it. Like I'm now much faster with Elixir and GraphQL than I ever was, building a Rails app. And it turns out it's a much better product at the end of the day if I'm like just getting something out quickly. So that was a surprise. I didn't expect it to be much faster, but I feel like separating the concerns as well as it forces you to makes you build stuff faster.
Now, you said you do most of that stuff with GraphQL. So are you using a front-end framework of some kind to build your views?
React Native and React, and the new thing I'm working on, we will have an Elm front end that'll replace the sort of Phoenix app set thing, but haven't gotten there yet. So primarily React and Preact, which is broadly the same thing.
I'm also curious as to why you think you're faster in Elixir than you would have been in Ruby and Rails.
So I think part of it is just the things are just faster when you don't. I think it comes back to the you wanted a banana, but you got the banana and the gorilla and then the jungle. I don't know if you've heard that quote. I don't remember who said it. Alan Kay, actually, I think said it. But that's sort of how he describes object-oriented, what we call object-oriented languages. And so just inherently, when you're building with functions, you're passing things in. You don't have a lot of external dependencies that are kind of global and expected, like state that happens to be attached to a piece of data. And so because of that, testing is trivial because you never build yourself into a corner where it's hard to test a thing because you can't, because it's just functions and data. And so that's ultimately, I think, what it is. Like the only thing that ever slowed me down on Rails stuff was I'd get to this point and then I realized, I've got to mock 37 things to make this service testable. And I just have never gotten there at all with Elixir because you kind of can't, because there's no state attached to your functions.
So what do you think the future of Elixir is? It seems like it's gaining in popularity pretty quickly. Do you think it's going to surpass some of the other languages that we see out there? JavaScript, Ruby, Python, Go.
I think it certainly is my hope that it will continue to grow in popularity. There are certainly a lot of languages have niches, or niche, however you want to say that. Like Python is very big in the data analysis, data processing. There's already these libraries that are just available to use. So it makes sense if you're going to do data crunching that you're probably just going to use where the libraries already are. With Ruby, I think it's positioned really well to kind of take over a lot of Ruby, and mainly because it has the good language syntax as a way to kind of welcome people in. And in a way, it's a little deceptive because it makes you think, this is just like Ruby, but faster and concurrent. And then you start to play with it a little bit more and you're like, oh my gosh, this is really different. But I think
they trick you.
Yeah. But it's also
been watching me play with it, and that's pretty much what I did.
I think it's super common, right? But it's okay, and I think it's an okay way to kind of bring people in. You have that initial comfort.
Yeah, my take on it is I don't care too much how much adoption it gets. I think this is how the Erlang folks felt. I care a bit because having a community helps you get libraries, which is why, Erlang never got a package manager. So I feel like that's very important if you want access to the rest of the community. But Elixir's kind of over that hump. And from here, I'd like a lot of people to use it because I think they'll benefit from it. but like I don't need to be using the most popular language, right? I don't want to write JavaScript on the back end. If I wanted to use the most popular language, I would probably do that. So I don't care that much about it. I mostly care, but in terms of where I think it's going, I think it's kind of a sleeper on sort of Internet of Things stuff. It's pretty fantastic if you're doing something like that, and it's not on a lot of people's radar. I mean, Elixir people know that it's useful for that, but the general purpose IoT people, I feel like, don't really know about it, and at some point they will become aware, and it will get a big influx, and Nerves will help with that. And I think that's really interesting because then you'll have all of these ideas come from totally not the web, right? And Elixir is perfectly suited for that, but in that way it'll kind of be less homogenized in the community.
I'm glad you brought up Nerves. That is one of the things that when I first started learning about Elixir and I learned that this was a project that's already out there, I was super excited. And I've been super excited about it. And it's on my mental workbench. Like, I want to play with this. I want to spend time with it. I just haven't dedicated the time to it yet. But the promise of that, I totally agree. It's when you think about the history of Erlang, how it was running, in these remote locations in Sweden as part of a phone network where you're running these routers. And if the router goes down and you have to send a tech physically out to go take care of this or reboot it or something, that's a real significant problem. And the idea is they solved that problem a long time ago, and they wanted to build a system that, it's okay if we drop a single phone call, but it's not okay for the network to go down. And just that idea of it's okay to let things fail when I can't recover from it. That's just, I can let that die and I'll just recover and come back. And that's what one of the neat things about Nerves is you can build these small IoT devices that can have live upgrades, and Nerves helps facilitate that. But it just helps solve a lot of these interesting problems. And it's a big direction where things are going is the whole IoT. And then you're always talking about security concerns. IoT devices have to be able to be upgraded because manufacturers aren't taking care of them. And they need to be upgraded because now your light bulbs and your toaster are used in a denial of service attack against somebody. And so Nerves, I love the idea of it being part of a broader audience and more people using that for their IoT because it does have a lot of those abilities to say, hey, we can update your firmware, and it has the built-in kind of framework for doing all of that.
Yeah, I think, so I'm glad that you brought up the live upgrades. That's something that's really interesting about Elixir that I haven't seen in other languages that I've been a part of, is just the ability to push code on a running server so that any further request takes the new code that's pushed. So I think, obviously, Elixir is going to be big in distributed systems work and IoT, as other people have said. And, for people who are coming from Ruby to things that you might have used a library for in the past, like maybe a sidekick type operation, Elixir is great for handling those things natively, just using OTP and agents and things like that to handle state, ETS tables and things like that to handle state. So,
yeah. One of my favorite things when I was first learning Elixir is just look through the Erlang standard library. It's extremely robust. You can have an SSH server that tunnels someone into one of your processes and does stuff, or spins up a process when someone SSHs in and gives them any of a number of things. Like maybe it's a MUD, I don't know. But that's just the fact that that's in the standard library, along with all kinds of other stuff. Like the debuggability of the Erlang VM is unbelievably good. And you don't care about it till you need it, and then you love it. So I think that's super interesting. And also, just rounding back to Nerves, I am probably very soon embarking on building a whole bunch of sort of IoT things around my house. I just bought some property, and I want to put Elixir devices around it because that seems fun.
That's really cool. Now I want to go play with all this stuff.
Do it.
All right, cool. Well, is there anything else that you think we should talk about in kind of an intro episode as far as, getting people excited about Elixir or getting people started with Elixir, or just by way of introduction? as far as, the companies you work for, any projects you're working on or anything like that?
I could just say if someone's like listening and they do Elixir and they're interested in being able to work in Elixir, on a more full-time basis. One of the contracts I'm working on is pretty much always looking for people. And it's really cool stuff. It's sort of the IoT-ish thing. So anyway, if someone's interested, I know that they're always interested in talking to people.
So with CodeFund, the project is actually open source, and there's not a lot of examples of open source Phoenix projects or, production code running. So I would just encourage people to come to our GitHub repository at gitcoin.co/CodeFund and just take a look at the code, pick one of the issues, open a pull request, and then you'll probably most likely deal directly with myself or Eric on that. So, just in terms of like getting started and learning some of the framework and the paradigms of Elixir and Phoenix, come take a look at it.
So now that you mentioned Gitcoin, I have to ask: Does Kevin play with Elixir these days?
Kevin is more just a Python guy still.
Okay,
yeah,
just curious.
Yeah, he hasn't gotten into it yet, but there's some possibility for cross operations there with him.
You're going to give him the same try it. You'll like it.
Definitely.
Nice. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do some picks. Mark, let's start with you.
So for my pick today, I'm just going to go with the elixirstatus.com that I mentioned. It's just a nice resource to just kind of keep your thumb on the heartbeat of what's going on in the Elixir community. People are announcing new libraries, new versions of libraries, blog articles, and just interesting things that are going on, conference announcements and such like that. And with that Elixir status, it's the hashtag #MyElixirStatus on Twitter. It's the same. A lot of those things get reposted. And if you want to learn more about what I'm doing, you can follow my blog at brainlid.org. And I am at brainlid on Twitter. That's it for me.
All right, Josh, what are your picks?
So my primary pick, and is not Elixir related. My focus, I like people to think about sort of systems generally. So there's this blog post that just was posted recently called Eponymous Laws of Tech. And it's really good. It just covers a whole lot of just kind of laws like Metcalfe's Law and Fitt's Law. And I think it's interesting that they're all collected in one spot. And I think it would benefit sort of architect people to read through them all and make sure you're aware of them. I have some that I was not familiar with. And then I guess on the Elixir front, I think that everyone should write tests. And there's this project called Wallaby that's really good for doing integration tests from Chris Keithley. And so I wanted to give it a shout out because it's awesome and you should play with it. It's a browser driver, but it's better than the others you've used.
Nice. So yeah, we've been trying to get an episode with the Wallaby folks for a while on JavaScript Jabber. So hopefully we can line that up, but it's cool tech. Justin, what are your picks?
So my pick in the latest Elixir Radar email, there was a link for Django knots actually to pick up Phoenix and Elixir. And so I'll post the link in the chat for everybody, but it's a great blog for people who are coming from Phoenix from Python and Django to pick up Elixir. And then personally, I'm working on a library called WaveWriter. It's on my GitHub. My GitHub name is Stare Into the Beard. And it's a non-web facing Elixir project that allows you to do parsing of wave files. And right now it can read and write and split channels, and I'm working on some normalization, some audio generation and stuff in there as well. So check that out and add some functions and features and stuff to it if you'd like. My GitHub and my Twitter handle are at Stare Into the Beard.
I forgot to mention my Twitter handle. It is Neuter, KNEWTER. So there we go. 14-year-old decisions, bad decisions.
That's great.
I was going to say that sounds horrible. All right. I'm going to jump in with some picks here as well. The first pick that I have, so I'm here at ngconf. And what I found is that a lot of these conferences are totally willing to help you do interviews with speakers and just kind of cover a topic or, highlight a talk or things like that. So I'm here at NGConf, which is the big Angular conference every year. It's held in Salt Lake City. So yeah, I didn't have to travel very far. Funny enough, I drove less than 45 minutes. Well, okay, I take it back. The traffic was really bad, so I drove about an hour and 15 minutes to get here. But I got a hotel up here downtown, staying in a hotel, even though I'm not that far from home. But yeah, I'm really enjoying just being up here, and I have a bunch of equipment. I'm just going to do an equipment pick this week. So I have a camera, and the camera came with a boom mic, which is kind of the mic that looks like a really fat Muppet finger. It's an Ordo or ORDRO camera. It's got a wide angle lens. The microphone's okay. The camera itself is decent. I got another camera previous to that, and the sound quality on it was awful. And so I couldn't use it again. I still have it, so I may use it for like a second angle to do the interviews on. But anyway, I've been pretty happy with that. And yeah, I got a tripod. It's just an Amazon Basics tripod. It was like $10. So it was cheaper than trying to figure out how to replace the little clip on top that got broken on my other tripod. But yeah, all of that's been really nice. And then one other thing that surprised me lately with just life in general is I've been kind of looking for a good way to get my dad around, because he's basically lost mobility, and it's really hard to just get in places because So just to give you an example, we had a family dinner at my sister's house on Sunday, and my brother and I basically had to lift him out of the car and then put him back in the car from the wheelchair. And, it's not comfortable for him. The clearance on the car isn't great. And so anyway, there are a lot of problems with doing it that way. So I was just looking around on Facebook Marketplace. Incidentally, I found another one in another classified site that's local on KSL Classifieds. Mark knows what that is. So the classified site had a wheelchair lift equipped van, and they were asking $3,000 for it, and I talked them down to $1,500. And it's surprising what you can find online, is all I'll say. And it turns out the Facebook Marketplace worked out for me, basically because KSL Classifieds and Craigslist expire their listings after 30 days, and Facebook Marketplace doesn't. They just don't expire them unless you mark them as sold. So anyway, I found the van, and they were willing to negotiate because they'd been trying to sell it for like 6 months. So anyway, I'm just going to throw that out there as a tip if you're looking for stuff, cars, whatever. I always buy used cars. You should see this van. It's a piece of trash. It's my piece of trash now. So anyway, yeah, I found that an interesting way to go to find stuff that you need. So I thought I'd call it out as kind of an interesting life tip. All right, folks. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up, and we will come back at you next week. We have guests lined up for the next 2 weeks. So let me just give you a preview of what that looks like. We have Brian Joseph signed up for next week, and he's going to talk to us about Elixir Script. And then the week after that, we have Chris Keithley coming to talk about whatever we want to talk about. But yeah, we have him lined up for next week. And then I think that's all we really have solid for the next few weeks. But we'll be lining more people up. So keep an eye or an ear out for those. We'll try and get all of the RSS feeds and stuff set up and make that all available for you as soon as possible. But yeah, and thank you all for being willing to jump on a call every week and talk about Elixir and help folks out.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll catch y'all next week. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.